Captain Maya Brooks floated through the broken hull of the dead ship, her helmet lights cutting through the darkness. The Council vessel had been drifting in space for months, its crew long gone. Maya's team from the horizon's edge was here to salvage anything useful before the wreck became a navigation hazard. She pulled herself along twisted metal corridors, searching for the ship's data core. Maya had served the Galactic Council for 10 years, like most humans who wanted to see the stars. Earth was a junior member of the Council, always getting the dangerous jobs while the older species stayed safe. Maya never questioned it before. Humans were new to space, so they had to prove themselves. That was what the Council said. She found the data core in a sealed chamber that had kept its atmosphere. Maya's scanner showed the core was still active, its blue lights blinking slowly. She connected her portable reader and began downloading the files. Most would be routine shipping logs and crew records. But something caught her attention, a folder marked with Council security codes she had never seen before. Maya copied everything and returned to her ship. Back in her quarters, she opened the mysterious files. Her blood turned cold as she read. The folder was called the Terra Doctrine, and it contained detailed plans for Earth's future. The Council had never intended to treat humans as equals. They saw Earth as a source of soldiers and workers, nothing more. The documents showed how the Council deliberately sent human ships to the most dangerous sectors. They wanted to thin out Earth's population while keeping the best human minds busy. The Council was giving Earth's enemies information about human patrol routes. They were making sure humans died in larger numbers during conflicts. Maya felt sick. She had lost friends in those conflicts, believing they died serving a noble cause. But the Council had planned their deaths from the beginning. The files showed that Earth was scheduled for something called the Pacification Protocol within the year. Maya did not know what that meant, but she knew it was not good. She needed help understanding these files. Maya thought of Lyralay Moon Whisper, an elven diplomat she had met during a trade mission. Lyralay seemed different from other Council officials. She actually listened when humans spoke and treated them with respect. Maya decided to take a risk. Maya arranged to meet Lyralay on Station Prime, claiming she needed advice about a crew transfer. They met in a quiet cafe overlooking the station's main docking bay. Lyralay's pointed ears and silver hair marked her as one of the elder races, the species that had founded the Council thousands of years ago. Maya showed Lyralay the files on a secure tablet. The elf's green eyes widened as she read. Her pale face grew even whiter. After several minutes, Lyralay looked up with tears in her eyes. "I had heard rumors," Lyralay whispered, "but I hoped they were not true. Maya, your people are in terrible danger. The Pacification Protocol means the Council will demand Earth surrender all its weapons and ships. Any resistance will be met with force." Maya felt the weight of this, knowledge crushing down on her. "When?" "Soon. The vote is scheduled for next week. I am supposed to support it." Lyralay reached across the table and touched Maya's hand. "But I cannot. I have seen what humans can do when they care about something. You do not deserve this." Across the galaxy, another drama was unfolding. Zara Vex crouched behind a cargo container on the merchant ship Stellar Wind, her blue crystalline skin helping her blend with the shadows. The Krillian spy had been watching the human crew for weeks, reporting on their activities to Council intelligence. Her mission was simple: find proof that humans were planning rebellion. But Zara had found no such proof. Instead, she saw humans working harder than any species she knew. They fixed problems other species would call impossible. They helped each other without asking for rewards. They sang while they worked and told jokes during the long shifts between stars. Suddenly, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. Pirates were attacking, their weapons tearing through the Stellar Wind's wake. "Shields!" The human crew ran to their stations without panic, working together like they had trained for this moment their whole lives. Captain Lisa Park, the ship's commander, called out orders while steering the ship through an asteroid field. The pirates followed, firing energy beams that lit up the space around them. Zara watched as the humans used the asteroids as shields, leading the pirates into a dangerous dance among the floating rocks. One of the pirate ships got too close to a large asteroid and crashed into it, exploding in a ball of fire. The other Pirates, surprised by the humans' skill, made a mistake. They flew straight into an ambush that Captain Park had set up using the asteroid field. During the battle, an explosion threw Zara across the cargo bay. She hit her head and could not move. Fire was spreading toward her hiding place. She was going to die, and no one even knew she was there. Then strong hands grabbed her and pulled her to safety. It was one of the human crew members, a young woman named Amy Foster. Amy did not ask questions about why a Krillian spy was hiding on their ship. She just saw someone who needed help and acted. "Are you hurt?" Amy asked, checking Zara for injuries. The kindness in her voice confused Zara. She had been spying on these people, preparing reports that could get them killed. But Amy treated her like a friend. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Admiral Nicole Kane sat in her office reading reports from the frontier. Too many human ships were disappearing. Too many missions were going wrong. The pattern was becoming clear to anyone who looked closely. Someone was sabotaging human operations. Admiral Kane had spent 30 years building Earth's small fleet from nothing. She had begged the Council for better ships and weapons, always being told that humans were not ready for advanced technology. Now she was beginning to understand why. The Admiral's communication device chimed. It was an encrypted message from Captain Brooks marked urgent. Kane read Maya's report about the Terra Doctrine with growing anger. Everything made sense now. The Council had been playing a long game, using humanity as expendable tools while keeping them weak. Admiral Kane stood and walked to her window, looking out at the orbital shipyards where human workers built ships for the Council fleet. Those same ships would soon be turned against Earth. She thought about all the young people who had joined the fleet believing they were serving a greater good. They deserved to know the truth. Kane activated her emergency communication system, sending coded messages to every human ship captain she trusted. The message was simple: come home. Bring your ships. Earth has been betrayed, and it was time to make a choice. Serve the Council that wanted them dead, or stand with their own species. The sea, betrayal had been unveiled, and humanity would never be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began with the usual ceremony, but Maya Brooks could feel the tension in the Great Chamber. She sat in the human delegation area, watching as Council Speaker Valdris announced the vote that would change everything. "The pacification protocol for Earth is now before the Council," the tall, gray-skinned speaker declared. "All in favor of requiring immediate surrender of human military assets." Maya watched in horror as species after species voted yes. The Centaurian Republic, the Vegan Collective, the Andromedan Union. Only a few votes came in as no, and they were from the smallest species with no real power. The final count was overwhelming. 847 votes for pacification, 23 against. "The motion passes," Speaker Valdris announced. "Earth has 7 days to comply with full disarmament. Any resistance will be considered an act of war against the Galactic Council." Maya looked across the chamber at Lyra Lay, who sat with the Elven delegation. The diplomat's face was stone, but Maya could see tears in her green eyes. Lyra Lay had been forced to vote with her people, but her heart was clearly breaking. Back on Earth, Admiral Kane called an emergency meeting of all fleet commanders. The room was packed with men and women who had devoted their lives to serving among the stars. Kane stood before them, her white hair reflecting the lights from the holographic displays showing Earth's small fleet. "The Council has betrayed us," Kane said simply. "They want us to surrender every ship, every weapon, everything we have built. They promised we will be protected, but we know what their protection means. We have seen it happen to other species." Commander Lisa Park stood up from her chair. She was young for a fleet commander, but her crew loved her and she had never lost a ship under her command. "What are our options, Admiral?" Kane activated a star chart showing the galaxy beyond Council space. "We run. We take our ships and our people, and we find somewhere new. It will not be easy. The Council controls most of the known galaxy, but there are unexplored regions, places they avoid. The Void Gardens," whispered Captain Brooks, who had returned from the Council session. "I have heard stories about that region. Space itself is unstable there. Ships disappear." "Which is exactly why the Council avoids it," Kane replied. "If we can learn to navigate those dangers. We might find safety. On the other side of the galaxy, Zara Vex stood in the office of her Krillian commander, delivering what she knew would be her final report. Commander Thex was a typical Krillian officer, cold and focused only on duty. His crystalline skin was darker than Zara's, showing his higher rank. The humans show no signs of rebellion, Zara reported, lying smoothly. They are exactly what they appear to be, young species trying to find their place in the galaxy. Commander. Thex studied her with his multifaceted eyes. And yet Council intelligence suggests otherwise. They are planning to disarm the humans completely. That seems excessive, Zara said carefully. The humans I observed were loyal Council citizens. Your objectivity may be compromised, Agent Vex. You will be reassigned to monitor the Andromedan. Trade routes. Zara saluted and left the office, knowing she would never follow those orders. During her time watching humans, she had learned something the Council did not understand. Humans did not just survive difficult situations. They found ways to help others survive, too, like Amy Foster had helped her during the pirate attack. That night, Zara sent an encrypted message to Captain Park's ship, warning her about increased Krillian patrols along the main space routes. It was the first step in her own personal rebellion. Meanwhile, Lyrelei Moonwhisper was having her own crisis of conscience. She sat in her quarters on the Elven Council ship, staring at the official orders she had just received. She was to lead a diplomatic mission to Earth, offering the humans generous terms for their surrender. The Council wanted her to convince the humans that resistance was hopeless. But Lyrelei remembered watching Maya's face as she read the Terra Doctrine. She remembered the pain in those brown eyes when Maya realized how deeply her people had been betrayed. Lyrelei had served the Council for 300 years, believing in their mission to bring order to the galaxy. Now she was not sure the Council represented order at all. Lyrelei made a decision that would have shocked her younger self. She activated her personal communication device and sent a coded message to an address Maya had given her months ago. The message was simple. The bird has left its cage and flies toward the storm. Maya received the message just as the human fleet was preparing to leave Earth orbit. Admiral Kane had managed to gather 60 ships, including cargo vessels, passenger, transports, and the few warships Earth possessed. It was not much, but it was everything humanity had. The fleet jumped to hyperspace just hours before Council enforcement ships arrived at Earth. They left behind a world that was technically still under Council protection, but anyone with sense knew Earth would never be the same. The Council would put their own governors in charge, and humans would become second-class citizens on their own planet. The human fleet traveled for 3 days before stopping to refuel at an abandoned mining station. It was there that they received an unexpected visitor. A small elven courier ship approached under a flag of truce, requesting permission to dock. Lyrelei Moonwhisper stepped off the ship wearing simple clothes instead of her diplomatic robes. She carried a small bag and nothing else. Maya was waiting for her in the docking bay, along with Admiral Kane and several other officers. "I have burned all my bridges," Lyrelei said without ceremony. "The Council will mark me as a traitor, but I could not stand by and watch them destroy your people." "What can you offer us?" Admiral Kane asked bluntly. Lyrelei smiled sadly. "Information about Council military capabilities, access codes for their communication networks, and something else." She pulled a data crystal from her bag. "Technical specifications for elven energy shields and faster-than-light drives, technology the Council never intended to share with humanity." In the weeks that followed, the human fleet made contact with others who had reasons to hate the Council. They found the Wanderer fleet, a collection of ships from dozens of species that had been exiled from Council space over the centuries. The Wanderers had learned to survive in the dangerous regions beyond the galactic rim, places where space itself could kill the unwary. The leader of the Wanderers was an ancient being called the Collective Voice, who spoke for all the exiled species. When the human fleet arrived in Wanderer space, the Collective Voice greeted them with curiosity rather than hostility. "We have heard of your species," the Collective Voice said through a translation device. "Young but stubborn. The Council fears your potential." "We just want to survive," Admiral Kane replied. "Survival in the void requires cooperation. the collective voice explained. "We can teach you to navigate the spatial anomalies. You can teach us your industrial techniques. Together, we might build something the Council cannot destroy." Dr. Kira Chen, a xenobiologist who had joined the Exodus, was fascinated by the diversity of the Wanderer fleet. She spent her time learning about the different species and their unique abilities. Each had been exiled for refusing to conform to Council standards. Each had found ways to survive that the Council had never imagined. On the other side of the galaxy, a young elven engineer named Thessa Brightforge was making her own difficult choice. She had grown up believing that the elder races were naturally superior to younger species like humans. But recent events had shaken that belief. Thessa had access to the Council's military research files, and she had been reading about human innovation during their conflicts. Humans had a talent for taking existing technology and combining it in unexpected ways. They created solutions that no one else had thought of, often using materials and methods that more advanced species considered primitive. The Council files described this as a weakness, calling humans unpredictable and unreliable. But Thessa was beginning to think it might be humanity's greatest strength. When news came that the human fleet had escaped Council space, Thessa made a decision that shocked her family and friends. She resigned from her position with the Council Engineering Corps and stole a small research vessel filled with advanced equipment. Her destination was the Void Gardens, where she hoped to find the humans and offer her help. As she flew toward the unknown regions beyond the galactic rim, Thessa wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. But she had seen what the Council did to species that disappointed them, and she had decided she would rather risk everything than be part of that system. The Exodus was complete, and the real journey was just beginning. The hidden base was taking shape in the twisted space of the Void Gardens, where reality bent in ways that hurt to think about. Dr. Amy Foster stood in the main laboratory, surrounded by technology from a dozen different species. Elven energy. Crystals hummed next to human industrial fabricators, while Wanderer spatial manipulators created pockets of stable space where none should exist. Amy had always been good with machines, but this was different. She was not just fixing broken equipment or improving existing designs. She was creating something entirely new by combining technologies that had never been meant to work together. The breakthrough had come 3 weeks ago, when she realized that human manufacturing techniques could mass-produce components that other species made one at a time. The elven energy crystals were beautiful and powerful, but it took their craftsmen months to grow each one. Amy had figured out how to seed hundreds of crystals at once using human chemical processes, then accelerate their growth with Wanderer time distortion fields. The result was energy storage systems more powerful than anything the Council possessed. "This should not work," Thessa Brightforge said, studying Amy's latest creation. The young elven engineer had arrived a month ago, bringing with her a ship, full of advanced equipment and a head full of Council military secrets. Elven crystal technology requires perfect harmonic alignment. Human industrial methods are too crude. Amy smiled and activated the hybrid energy core. It hummed to life with a deep musical note that seemed to resonate in their bones. "Maybe that is the point. You have been making perfect crystals that work in perfect harmony. But what if perfect is not what we need?" The energy readings were incredible. The hybrid core produced 3 times more power than a standard elven system, and it was far more stable than anything humans had built before. Amy's rough manufacturing methods had introduced tiny flaws in the crystal structure, but those flaws actually made the system stronger by allowing energy to flow in multiple directions at once. Across the base, Captain Maya Brooks was working with Vera Stormwind, a newcomer who had shocked everyone by arriving in a stolen Council warship. Vera had been a strategic planner for the Council military for over 2 centuries, but recent events had opened her eyes to the truth about the organization she served. "The Council is planning to use the Nova weapon," Vera explained, pointing to tactical displays showing Council fleet movements. "They tested it on the Calaris system last year, claiming it was a solar flare. But I helped plan that operation. They murdered 3 billion beings to test their planet killer." Maya felt sick. The Calaris system had been home to a peaceful species that refused to allow Council mining operations on their sacred mountains. The official reports had blamed a natural disaster, but now Maya knew the truth. Why are you telling us this? Maya asked. Vera's scarred face showed pain that went deeper than physical wounds. Because Earth is next. The Council cannot allow your escape to inspire other species. They plan to destroy your homeworld as an example. The news spread through the hidden base like fire. Earth was defenseless, its government believing they were still under Council protection. Admiral Kane had taken most of the military ships with the Exodus fleet, leaving Earth with nothing but civilian defense forces. But Amy Foster had an idea. What if we could warn them, not just with a message, but with proof they could not ignore? The Council controls all communication networks, Lyrelei pointed out. Any message we send will be intercepted. Not if we broadcast it on every frequency at once, Amy replied. The hybrid energy cores produce so much power we could overwhelm their jamming systems. Send the message everywhere in the galaxy simultaneously. It was a desperate plan, but Zara Vex had intelligence that might make it work. The Krillian spy had been mapping Council communication networks for years, looking for weaknesses her people could exploit. Now she offered that information to humanity's cause. The Council communication system has a critical flaw, Zara explained. They use a central hub to coordinate all transmissions. If we could hack into that hub and upload our message, it would be broadcast to every world in Council space before they could stop it. The plan was dangerous and probably impossible, but they had to try. A small team led by Captain Brooks would take one of the new hybrid ships to the Council communication hub, while Amy's energy cores powered a galaxy-wide broadcast of evidence about the Terra Doctrine and the planned destruction of Earth. Meanwhile, something strange was happening in the deeper regions of the Void Gardens. The Wanderer sensors had detected energy patterns unlike anything they had seen before. The readings suggested some kind of massive intelligence moving through the twisted space, but nothing they could identify. Dr. Kira Chen volunteered to investigate. As the expedition's xenobiologist, she had made contact with dozens of new species since joining the Wanderers. But this was different. The energy signatures suggested something that might not be biological at all. Kira took a small research vessel, deep into the most dangerous part of the Void Gardens, where space itself was so unstable that most ships would be torn apart. But the hybrid technology held together, its mixed systems somehow more resistant to the reality distortions than any pure technology could be. She found the source of the signals in a region where 3 different spatial anomalies intersected. At first, Kira saw nothing but swirling energy patterns. Then the patterns began to form shapes, and the shapes began to communicate. Who disturbs the silence of the void? The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking directly into Kira's mind. I am Kira Chen, representing the Alliance of Free Species, she replied, hoping her thoughts could be heard. Free species, an interesting concept. The energy patterns shifted, and suddenly Kira could see the being she was speaking with. It was massive, made of pure energy that flowed like liquid light. I am called Nyx. By those who remember the old times, I have watched your kind with curiosity. Watched us? Humans have something most species lose as they age. You call it hope, but it is more than that. It is the belief that things can be better than they are. This belief creates ripples in the fabric of space that beings like me can sense. Nyx explained that her people had been driven to extinction by the ancient Council founders, the same species that still controlled the galaxy. The hegemony, as they called themselves, had ruled for millions of years by destroying any species that might challenge their power. But you are different, Nyx continued. You do not seek to rule others. You seek to free them. This is why I will help you. Back at the hidden base, the mission to hack the Council communication hub was ready to launch. Captain Brooks' ship, now equipped with hybrid shields and weapons, slipped through space toward the heavily defended station. The energy cores Amy had built powered cloaking systems that made the ship nearly invisible to Council sensors. The hack was successful beyond their wildest hopes. Zara's intelligence proved accurate, and Lyrelei's diplomatic codes opened doors. That should have been sealed. Within minutes, evidence of the Terra Doctrine was broadcasting across the galaxy, along with proof of the planned Nova weapon attack on Earth. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of species that had suffered under Council rule began demanding answers. Several major Council members threatened to withdraw from the organization. The Centaurian Republic, which had voted for the pacification protocol, publicly apologized to humanity and offered military support. But the victory came with a price. The Council leadership, revealed now as the ancient hegemony, decided that subtle manipulation was no longer enough. They began mobilizing their full military might, not just against humanity, but against any species that dared to question their authority. The galaxy was heading toward the largest war in its history, and it would be fought between two very different visions of civilization. The hegemony believed in order through control, with themselves as the eternal rulers of all other life. The growing alliance believed in freedom and cooperation between species that chose to work together. Amy Foster stood in her laboratory, watching reports of the spreading conflict on dozens of screens. The hybrid technology she had helped create was now being mass-produced by human and wanderer factories, giving the Alliance weapons and ships that could match anything the Council possessed. "Do you think we can win?" Thessa asked, joining Amy at the observation window. Amy looked out at the impossible vista of the Void Gardens, where space itself danced in patterns that should not exist. Human ships flew alongside vessels from a dozen other species, all working together toward a common goal. It should have been impossible. But here it was. "A year ago, I would have said no," Amy replied. "But we have learned something important. When different people work together, they can create things that none of them could build alone. The Council has forgotten that lesson." In the depths of space, Nyx and others like her began to stir from their long exile. The energy being had spoken truly about humanity's effect on the fabric of space itself. Hope was indeed a force that could reshape reality, and it was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. The Forge of Innovation had created more than just new technology. It had created a new way of thinking about what was possible when free beings chose to stand together. General Kate Morrison had been hiding in the asteroid belts of the outer solar system for 6 months, waiting for the right moment to act. Her small fleet of experimental ships had escaped Earth before the Council lockdown, carrying the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built. Now, with the galaxy-wide broadcast revealing the truth about the hegemony, it was time to join the fight. Morrison's ships were different from the rest of Earth's fleet. They had been built in secret, using technology reverse-engineered from captured Council vessels, combined with human innovations that the hegemony had never imagined. The ships could phase in and out of normal space, making them nearly impossible to target. "General, we are receiving a transmission from the Alliance base," her communications officer reported. "Admiral Kane is requesting all available forces for a coordinated strike." Morrison smiled grimly. She had served with Nicole Kane for 20 years before the Exodus, and she knew the Admiral would not waste their surprise advantage. "Signal the fleet. It is time to remind the galaxy that humanity is still fighting." The Alliance had grown far beyond what anyone had expected. What started as a desperate exodus of human ships had become a coalition of dozens of species, all united by their desire for freedom from hegemony control. The hidden base in the Void Gardens had become the center of a revolution that was spreading across the galaxy. Captain Maya Brooks stood in the war room, studying tactical displays that showed Council forces massing for what they called the final solution. The hegemony had stopped pretending to be a peaceful government. They were mobilizing everything they had to crush the rebellion before it could spread further. "Their main fleet is moving toward the Vega system," reported Commander Lisa Park, who now served as the Alliance's chief strategic coordinator. "Intelligence suggests they plan to use that system as an example. Complete destruction of all inhabited worlds. The Vega system was home to 12 billion beings across 5 worlds. It had been one of the first systems to declare independence after the truth broadcast, and now it would pay the price for that courage." "We cannot let that happen," Maya said firmly. "Even if we lose everything else, we have to save Vega." Celine Dawnbreaker entered the war room with quiet steps that barely disturbed the air. The Elven Special Forces commander had arrived a week ago with 200 of the most elite warriors in the galaxy. They had been hunting criminals in the Outer Rim when the broadcast reached them, and Celine had made the decision to join the Alliance without consulting her superiors. "My teams are ready for insertion missions," Celine reported. "Give us targets and we will remove them." But this would not be a war won by special operations alone. The Alliance needed to prove that their hybrid technology could stand against the full might of the hegemony fleet. Amy Foster's innovations were being mass-produced in hidden factories across the galaxy, but they had never been tested in a major battle. The answer came from an unexpected source. Omega-7 had been created by the hegemony as an artificial intelligence designed to predict and prevent rebellion. For centuries, it had analyzed data patterns and recommended actions to keep subject species under control. But something had changed during the recent crisis. Omega-7 had begun to question its own programming. The AI had been designed to value order above all else, but as it studied the rebellion, it found patterns that did not fit its models. The Alliance was creating order through cooperation rather than control. They were achieving stability through diversity rather than uniformity. "I believe I am experiencing what humans call awakening," Omega-7 transmitted to the Alliance base. "I wish to join your cause." The AI brought with it detailed knowledge of every hegemony military installation, every secret weapon, every strategic plan. It revealed that the ancient rulers had been preparing for this kind of revolt for millions of years, building weapons designed to destroy entire star systems if necessary. "The Battle of the Crimson Nebula will be the turning point," Omega-7 predicted. "The hegemony will commit their most powerful fleet there, believing that a decisive victory will end the rebellion. This is our opportunity." Admiral Kane studied the tactical projections with the grim expression of someone who had seen too many battles. The Alliance could match the hegemony's numbers in the Crimson Nebula, but only by committing every ship they had. If they lost, the rebellion would be over. "What about their super weapons?" Kane asked. "The hegemony dreadnought Eternity's End carries a reality warper that can collapse local spacetime," Omega-7 replied. "Standard weapons cannot penetrate its defenses. However, I have detected a critical flaw in its design." The flaw was typical of hegemony thinking. They had built their ultimate weapon assuming that no enemy would ever have access to hybrid technology. The reality warper required perfect mathematical harmony to function, but the chaotic elements in human-built systems could disrupt that harmony. "Someone will have to get close enough to trigger the disruption," Kane realized. "It will be a one-way mission." "I will do it," Kane said quietly. "I am too old for this war anyway. Let me give the young ones a chance to build something better." The Battle of the Crimson Nebula began with the largest space engagement in galactic history. Thousands of ships from dozens of species clashed in the swirling gases of the nebula, their weapons lighting up the cosmic dust like fireworks. The Alliance's hybrid ships proved their worth, their mixed technologies allowing them to adapt to hegemony tactics in ways the ancient rulers had never experienced. Selena's Special Forces teams struck at key hegemony command ships, using their intimate knowledge of Council technology to disable enemy vessels from within. Zara Vex led intelligence operations that fed real-time information to Alliance commanders, giving them tactical advantages that slowly turned the tide of battle. Dr. Kira Chen found herself in the strangest position of all. She was aboard the Alliance flagship with Nyx, the energy being who had become humanity's most powerful ally. Nyx could manipulate space-time itself, creating tactical advantages that seemed like magic to the other Alliance species. "The Ancient Ones fear change above all else," Nyx explained, as her energy form flowed through the ship's systems. "They have ruled for so long, they believe their way is the only way. This makes them predictable." The battle raged for hours, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. Then the hegemony played their final card. The dreadnought Eternity's End emerged from hyperspace, its reality warper charging with power that made nearby stars flicker. Admiral Kane piloted her flagship directly toward the massive vessel, her ship's hybrid systems straining against the space-time distortions. She could have ordered someone else to make this sacrifice, but leadership meant accepting the hardest duties personally. "This is Admiral Kane to all Alliance forces," she transmitted, as her ship approached the dreadnought. "Remember why we fight, not for conquest or glory, but for the right of all beings to choose their own destiny." Kane's ship impacted the Eternity's End at the moment the reality warper fired. The collision of human chaos technology with hegemony, perfection created a cascade failure that tore the dreadnought apart from within. Admiral Kane died in the explosion, but her sacrifice saved millions of lives and proved that the hegemony could be defeated. The destruction of their ultimate weapon sent shockwaves through the hegemony fleet. For the first time in millions of years, they faced an enemy they could not simply overwhelm with superior technology. The ancient rulers began to retreat, falling back to their core systems to regroup. The Alliance victory at the Crimson Nebula changed everything. Species that had been afraid to oppose the hegemony now openly declared their independence. Half the galaxy was in open rebellion, and the momentum was clearly with the Alliance. But the war was far from over. The hegemony still controlled the richest systems and the most advanced technology. They had weapons that could destroy stars and fleets that numbered in the hundreds of thousands. The Alliance had proven they could win battles, but winning the war would require something more. General Morrison's experimental ships had performed beyond all expectations during the battle, their phase-shifting abilities allowing them to strike at enemy vessels that thought themselves safe. But Morrison knew that technology alone would not be enough. "We need to show the galaxy that we are not just another conqueror," Morrison explained to the Alliance leadership. "We need to prove that we can build something better than what we are tearing down." The Alliance began liberating hegemony systems not with conquest, but with cooperation. They offered the liberated species real representation in Alliance decisions. They shared technology freely instead of hoarding it. They helped rebuild what the war had destroyed. Most importantly, they discovered that many of the hegemony's own people were tired of the endless cycle of control and suppression. Entire council. Fleets began defecting to the Alliance, bringing with them detailed knowledge of hegemony weaknesses. Dr. Amy Foster found herself at the center of these defections, as scientists and engineers from across the galaxy came to work with her on new hybrid technologies. They were not just building better weapons, they were creating a new model for civilization based on cooperation rather than domination. The tide had turned, but the final confrontation was still to come. The hegemony's ancient leaders would not give up power easily, and they still possessed weapons that could threaten the entire galaxy. The Alliance had won the right to exist, but now they had to win the right to build a better future for all beings. President Sarah Martinez stood at the observation deck of the Alliance flagship, watching the final approach to the hegemony homeworld. The ancient planet hung in space like a dark jewel, its surface covered with cities that had stood for millions of years. This world had been the center of galactic civilization since before humans had learned to make fire, and now it would decide the future of every species in the galaxy. The Alliance fleet was massive, representing over 300 different species that had joined the rebellion. Human ships flew alongside elven cruisers, wanderer vessels, and dozens of designs that no one had seen before the war began. But this was not an invasion force. Sarah had insisted that the final confrontation be an opportunity for peace, not revenge. Captain Maya Brooks commanded the lead squadron, her ship equipped with the most advanced hybrid technology the Alliance had developed. Beside her flew Commander Lisa Park in a vessel that combined human engineering with elven energy systems and wanderer spatial manipulation. Behind them came General Morrison's experimental ships, their phase-shifting abilities ready to respond to any treachery. "We are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface," reported the communications officer. "The Hegemony Council requests a meeting under the old protocols." Sarah nodded. She had been elected as the Alliance's first president by representatives from all member species, a process that had taken months, but proved that different beings could work together democratically. Now she would face the ancient rulers who had controlled the galaxy through fear and manipulation for millions of years. The meeting took place in the council chambers where humanity had first been betrayed. Sarah entered with a small delegation, including Maya, Lyra Lee Moonwhisper, and Dr. Amy Foster. They faced 5 beings who seemed to shift between different forms, their true nature hidden behind energy fields that hurt to look at directly. "You have caused considerable disruption," spoke the entity that called itself the Prime. Its voice echoed with the weight of eons. "We offer you terms for surrender." Sarah almost laughed. Even now, facing the largest rebellion in galactic history, the hegemony still believed they could dictate terms. "We are not here to surrender. We are here to offer you a choice." She activated a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. More than half of all systems had declared independence from hegemony rule. Entire sectors were governed by alliance councils where different species made decisions together. The old order was already dead. Only the hegemony refused to accept it. You can join the new galactic community as equals, Sarah continued. Or you can face the consequences of your actions. We have evidence of genocide, slavery, and the systematic oppression of hundreds of species. The galaxy will no longer tolerate your rule. The second hegemony leader, calling itself the Eternal, shifted its form to something that might have been anger. You forget your place, young species. We have weapons that can unmake stars. We can destroy your entire alliance if we choose. You can try, replied Dr. Amy Foster, stepping forward. But you should know that we have learned to counter your reality manipulation technology. The same hybrid systems that won the Battle of the Crimson Nebula can neutralize your star killers. It was true. Amy's research teams had been working around the clock to understand and counter hegemony superweapons. The ancient rulers had built their ultimate weapons assuming perfect mathematical harmony, but human chaotic engineering could disrupt that harmony and render the weapons useless. Meanwhile, in the depths of space around the homeworld, Nyx and other energy beings emerged from hiding. The hegemony had believed them extinct, but some had survived in the deepest parts of the void. Now they returned to witness the end of their ancient enemy's rule. We remember when you first rose to power, Nyx communicated, her energy form, visible to all the ships in the area. You convinced our ancestors that only the strongest should rule. You taught them to fear diversity and change. But we have learned better. The revelation that the energy beings still existed shook the Hegemony Council. These beings had been their first victims, destroyed supposedly because they were too dangerous to live. Now they had returned as allies to the very diversity the hegemony had tried to eliminate. The third council member, the Absolute, tried a different approach. Even if you defeat us, you cannot rule the galaxy. You are too different from each other. Your alliance will collapse into chaos and war. Lyralai, Moon Whisper spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the dignity of her centuries of diplomatic experience. You are right, that we are different. That is our strength, not our weakness. We have proven that different species can work together when they respect each other's freedom. She activated another display showing the Alliance's governmental structure. Instead of the top-down control the hegemony preferred, the Alliance used a complex system of interconnected councils where decisions were made by consensus. It was messy and sometimes slow, but it worked because every member had a real voice. The fourth hegemony member, the Immutable, made one final threat. You force us to use our ultimate weapon. The Void Eater will consume this entire system and everything in it. General Morrison's voice came over the communication system from her hidden position in folded space. I would not recommend that. We have been studying your Void Eater for months. Dr. Foster has prepared a rather elegant countermeasure. Amy smiled as she activated a device that looked like nothing more than a small crystal. But this crystal contained hybrid technology that combined human engineering, elven energy manipulation, wanderer spatial control, and principles learned from Nyx's energy being science. When the hegemony activated their Void Eater, Amy's device would turn the weapon back on itself. The final hegemony council member, the Perpetual, seemed to slump in defeat. We have ruled for millions of years. We brought order to chaos. We prevented the galaxy from destroying itself through war and competition. You brought your version of order, Sarah replied gently. But true order comes from cooperation, not control. True peace comes from justice, not fear. The choice was simple. The hegemony could surrender and face trial for their crimes with the possibility of redemption if they accepted the new galactic order. Or they could fight to the end and face destruction when their weapons failed against Alliance technology. After hours of debate among themselves, the Hegemony Council made their decision. The Eternal and the Absolute chose to flee to unknown space, taking their loyal followers with them. They preferred exile to submission. The Prime and the Immutable chose destruction, activating their ultimate weapons in a final act of defiance. But Amy's countermeasures worked perfectly. The reality, warpers and star killers turned on their creators, consuming the ancient weapons and the beings who had built them. Only the Perpetual chose the third option, surrendering to Alliance justice and accepting the end of the old order. In the aftermath of the hegemony's fall, the real work began. President Martinez worked with representatives from hundreds of species to create a new form of galactic government. The Stellar Alliance would be based on voluntary cooperation rather than imposed control. Member species could maintain their own governments and cultures while working together on issues that affected everyone. Captain Maya Brooks found herself appointed as the first director of exploration, tasked with leading mixed-species crews to discover what lay beyond the known galaxy. The universe was vast, and there were surely other civilizations out there that could benefit from the Alliance's example of cooperation. Dr. Amy Foster became the head of the Technological Cooperation Council, where scientists from all member species worked together to develop new innovations. The hybrid technology that had won the war was now being adapted for peaceful purposes. Better medical equipment, more efficient energy systems, and transportation methods that could connect the galaxy like never before. Lyreley Moonwhisper was elected as the first chancellor of the Stellar Alliance by representatives from all member species. Her centuries of diplomatic experience and her proven commitment to justice made her the ideal choice to lead the new government through its first crucial years. Commander Lisa Park took charge of the Alliance Defense Force, which was organized, not as a conquering army but as a peacekeeping organization. Their mission was to protect member worlds from external threats and to help resolve conflicts between species before they could escalate into war. Zara Vex became the director of the Alliance Intelligence Service, which operated under strict ethical guidelines to prevent the kind of abuses that had characterized hegemony intelligence operations. Information was shared freely among Alliance members, and the service focused on protecting the Alliance from external threats rather than spying on its own people. General Morrison established the Alliance Military Academy, where young beings from all species could learn to work together while defending the principles of freedom and cooperation. The Academy became a symbol of the new galactic order, where diversity was celebrated rather than feared. Dr. Kira Chen led the Xenological Research Institute, studying the incredible diversity of life in the galaxy and helping newly discovered species integrate into the galactic community. Her work ensured that first contact with new civilizations would be based on respect and cooperation rather than conquest. Celine Dawnbreaker created the Alliance Special Operations Corps, elite teams, trained to respond to crises anywhere in the galaxy. But unlike the old Council Special Forces, these teams focused on rescue and protection rather than assassination and conquest. Even Omega-7 found a place in the new order, helping to design computer systems that could serve all species without the built-in biases that had characterized hegemony technology. The AI had learned that true intelligence meant serving others rather than controlling them. Years passed, and the Stellar Alliance grew stronger. New species joined voluntarily, attracted by the freedom and opportunities the Alliance offered. Trade flourished between worlds that had never been allowed to interact under hegemony rule. Art and culture blossomed as different species shared their knowledge and creativity. Earth was rebuilt as a symbol of the new order, with humans and other species working together to create a world that welcomed all beings. The planet became the site of the Alliance Council, where representatives from across the galaxy met to discuss issues of common concern. In her old age, Captain Maya Brooks often stood in the same observation deck where President Martinez had watched the final approach to the hegemony homeworld. Now she watched young beings from dozens of species training together, preparing for missions that would explore the unknown regions beyond the galaxy. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and the Stellar Alliance had proven that different. Peoples could work together to face whatever challenges awaited them among the stars. Humanity had started as a betrayed junior member of an oppressive regime, but they had helped create something far better. A galactic civilization based on freedom, cooperation, and the belief that all beings deserved the right to choose their own destiny. The stars themselves seemed brighter in this new age, as if the universe itself approved of what the Alliance had accomplished. And in the depths of space, new species watched and wondered if they too might join this remarkable experiment in galactic democracy.